Hi, this is David Odell with OdellCompleteConcrete. Here's the job we're just going to demo out. We're going to demo this driveway, this sidewalk. We're going to put some new concrete in, new colored stamped concrete. As you can see, this walkway is pretty shot. It's got some brick that's falling off the edges and in between, and the grout's falling off, and it's got some puddles here and there, and I'm starting to break it out now with the Makita 60-pounder, and it's breaking it up relatively easily because there's no steel in it, so that's always nice. It comes out real easy that way. Basically, we just use a pry bar, a 20-pound sledge, and then the 60-pound jackhammer, and that'll about remove anything. Up to about 6 inches, then you got to think about getting something a little bit stronger, maybe even air or skid steer with a breaker or something on it. Here's what it looks like when you get it all out. We've got a little trash enclosure area there too. This driveway was asphalt before, and typically asphalt's about 2 inches thick, and then it normally has 4 inches of road base under it, and that's kind of what supports the asphalt. The asphalt itself is not very structural, so you get the base and stuff under there, and it works as one unit. So basically, concrete, I like to go 4 inches thick, and with that road base and asphalt being there, I only had 2 inches, so I got to dig all this road base out basically and get rid of it, because I want to get 4 inches of concrete, and I want some rebar in here, and then that'll hold itself. Here's how we check the grade to make sure that we're deep enough and ready to pour concrete. We're checking the grade right now to see if we've got 4 inches deep. We laid the 2x4 across from point A to point B, so we have fixed points of reference that we have to match. So we got about 3.5 right here. Over here we've got a solid 4. Okay. Over here we've got about 4.5, 4.25. So we got an average of 4 inches there. So I pulled a few string lines to get set up, start putting my forms in. I'm just going to use some 2.5 inch by 3/4 inch 18-inch wood stakes. Then I'm going to use 2x4 Douglas fir wood. And if you see the gate entrance out there, I decided to move this walkway a little bit from where it previously was, because it wasn't lined up with anything. It was just kind of randomly placed. So what I did, so my joints would line up with something when I joint this out, I lined up this form going down with the inside of that block wall, and it's straight with that wall. So that way when I join it, I can joint straight through to the corner of that block wall. My joints look straight with the form, and everything kind of makes sense. Before, it really had no rhyme or reason, it was just there. So we're going to put this rebar at 2 foot centers, both directions. We're pouring it a little bit deep. Sometimes it's easier just to pour it deep if you run into that situation than to have to truck dirt or sand in. You just order a little more concrete on one truck coming in, and then just fill up the hole one time with one pump. We're going to be doing an integral color mix into the concrete. which is a lot better than your stains or dyes or paints, because it's part of the concrete all the way through. And then what we'll do is we'll stamp this with, I'm going to use a Belgium slate seamless texture mat. And basically it's just a texture, and it doesn't have the deep joints in it. It just has the surface texture of a kind of a rough stone. I want to use a secondary color on top of that integral color as well. The secondary color I'm going to use is a powder antiquing release. I don't know what brand, I forget that I'm going to use, but there's a lot of different brands that make all these products. I just get whatever's most convenient, you know, because they all work about the same. You notice those rebars on the angle, on an angle on all those corners. I like to put those because that's always a prime crack point. And what that does is it stops it from cracking, and it holds those corners together. I'm going to wrap these pipes with some foam, you know, that way when the concrete moves or shifts, or maybe the house moves or something during an earthquake or something of that nature, that maybe the pipes won't get sheared off at the slab. Here we are. I've had this concrete ordered with the color in it from the batch plant. They use a liquid color to put it in the concrete at the batch plant. It's they use Davis. It's a Davis product, but it comes in a powder form as well. You can see this isn't your typical color concrete by looking at this. Now, just like regular concrete without color, it always starts dark, and then as it dries it gets lighter and lighter, and it normally takes about a good 45 days before you have one consistent color throughout the whole job site. That's what I found is kind of a rule, about 45 days. You know, it could be less or more depending on your shade and weather, heat, ground, water and stuff like that as well plays a part in all of that. So it's not a perfect science, but you know, you can kind of guesstimate it. So that's what it looks like when you get it rotted off from your fixed points. I've got a little 3.5 foot magnesium bow float. I'll run that over it. I laid all this down before I even touched it, and then went back, and it was still plenty wet enough to work it. You have only so much time to get the concrete out of the truck, and you know, to get your finished product, because you've got probably 4 hours from start to finish on just your average day of 70 degrees, 75 degrees. About 4 hours start to finish, lay down finished product. So there's a timeline involved in doing concrete. It's not you kind of stop when you want and then start again. You got to kind of go until you're done. So after we bowl float it, we can kind of see where there may be some low points here and there, and we just sprinkle that back with a little of the excess that we saved. I'm just going to run the 10-inch walking edger, 1/2-inch radius. Basically, this will be a very light brown when this is cured out. You can see it's a dark brown at this point, but in 45 days or so it'll be a light brown. And then I have my release color on this one is an autumn brown. So at the point of stamping, which will be from this point, I would say in about 1.5 hours we'll start stamping from the looks of it right here. What we'll do is we'll throw on the secondary powder antiquing release, throw that on there with dash brush, get it covered, everything. And that's after we have a nice smooth trowel finish. We'll dust it all, and then we'll start. The dust also acts as a release for the mat so they don't stick and pucker the concrete up. Now I'm just double checking some critical points of slope right near the doors, of course, is kind of important. You don't really want water going in the door, and you don't want it puddling in front of a door, because that could be a hazardous situation, going in or out of a door and stepping in a bird bath, or for some reason the water sits there for a period of time and algae growth or something like that. Could get pretty hazardous in that situation. So I want some really good slope right out of this door coming out of the garage, and I don't want it to go in the garage, and I don't want it to lay there. So I let this firm up a little bit, and then I'm going to cut it with my disposable 4-foot level. It's kind of an old one, but it still has a bubble in it, and it's taking a little beating, but it's going to take more of a beating with getting concrete on it all the time. So I'm just creating a little trough so I can channel the water away from the house and into the planter. I've got a couple joints here that I just ran with my cutter, and I'm going to funny float all the edger lines and joint lines out with this funny float here. It's a hand float with a pole on it, basically. And it's not wood and it's not magnesium, but it is fiberglass. My first choice for moving mud around would be a wood hand float, of course, because that kind of grabs and you can really push it around. But my second choice, of course, would be the fiberglass hand float, and then my third choice would be the magnesium, because I mean it's just kind of just skims it around. It doesn't really, it's not very aggressive, in other words. So this is what I cut the initial layout of my joints. I cut it with this, and it's 2.5 inches deep. So that means what it's doing at this point, because the concrete's pretty wet, it's just separating the aggregate for 2.5 inches down, which means it's going to most likely crack in that point because there's no aggregate spanning that spot anymore. It's just cream. Cream will go back into there, but that's about it. No aggregate to speak of. But I'll do my finish up with just a 3/4 deep, 1/2 inch round. This particular job here, we got a lot of rain after I poured this job. Got flooded everything, and the ground got real wet. We had to wait. I think we waited like 65 days or so before we could even go back to seal this, because I like to put the good lacquer base sealer on here on stamped concrete. The water, it's a lacquer base wet look, and then I'll put some shark's grip in there, which is just kind of gives it a little bit of a kind of a sand, like probably 100, maybe 100 grit. Probably about a 300 grit type finish, so it's a non-slip. You mix that in with the clear sealer. That you don't want to seal them early with that type of sealer, because what you can do is trap water into the surface, and then what happens is the water gets underneath the surface and the sealer is no longer clear. It starts to look like milk, and that's basically water trapped under the sealer. So in order to fix that, you've got to remove the sealer, and then you can reapply the sealer. So you need these to cure out really well, especially this time of year that we did this. It's we had to wait, like I said, 60 or 90 days, something like that. Here's the powder release. I'm kind of stirring it up in the bucket to get it, because it kind of settles and gets compacted at the bottom, and you want it nice and fluffy. It's kind of like a talcum powder consistency, baby powder. You want to fluff it up real nicely so it spreads real easily and evenly without damaging the concrete finish. You just want it to kind of float down on there. So that's what I did here. Now I'm just going to start laying my mats down, and I'm going to overlap them a good 6 inches every time on the edges. And then what you want to do is flip up the bottom mat, because you don't want to leave that edge of the mat showing on the concrete, so you got to kind of roll it up and tap those lines out. After we stamp, a lot of times you're going to get closure on some of your joints, depending on how hard your concrete is and how hard you hit it, things of that nature. But you just want to hit it, you know, with the pounder, make sure you get the texture, and then take a look at your joints, make sure they didn't close up on you, and if they did, you can use a chisel to open them back up. You can use the edge of a magnesium hand float. You can use a roller. They have rollers that you can roll through the joints to open them back up. Whatever you got. I mean, there's a lot of little odds and ends you can use to open those up, but you don't want to drag it through those joints. Oh, you just want to press it. So here is 60 days later, and I've pressure washed this the day before to get it really clean, and then give it a whole day to dry, basically. And then I've got the good sealer. See, I'm using just a regular $10 garden sprayer. I'm putting the lacquer base in there, and it's good for just one shot, because what this lacquer base will do is it'll eat through your hose and it'll explode on you. So you got about 2 hours to use one of these before that sprayer and that hose blow up on you. Because the acetone or in lacquer, it's in the sealer, will destroy your hose basically. So this is how it's going to always look. I mean, it looks like it's wet right now, yeah, but this is how it's going to stay. I mean, it will get a little bit more of a matte look to it in a couple weeks, but it's pretty much the color right now, how it's really popping. That's how it's going to kind of stay. Even though you'll lose some of that sheen in a couple weeks, that's what it's going to look like. This sealer will protect it from future staining, oils, anything you may spill on there. It also helps from fading, things of that nature. Thanks for watching my video. Stay tuned for the next one. It's going to be a good one. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to keep seeing these awesome concrete videos. See, I'm walking on this, and it's only been about 30 minutes. This stuff dries fast, but I do add a little bit of acetone to my lacquer base just to give it that kick. I'll go about a third, 2/3 of the good stuff, and then about a third of the acetone, and then it can spray really nicely. Dries quickly. You don't get air bubbles or pockets. That's what happens with that. When you go full strength lacquer base, you put it on too thick. You can put multiple coats, but don't put the first one on thick or any other coat. Otherwise, you're going to get air bubbles. Thanks for watching.